are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Hello and welcome to Weather Watch on Germantown Municipal Television. I'm your host Finnegan Gruggett, a student here at Houston High School. In this episode, we will talk about the different procedures in place to prepare hospitals for severe weather and how they're affected by extreme weather. We'll kick off the show with David Evans, Director of Security and Centricom at Methodist University Hospital. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Glad to be here, Finnegan.
So as we start off the show, would you mind explaining what your daily duties are at Methodist University?
I'm the Director of Security and also Centricom. Essentially, I am the point of contact on all physical security matters as well as any other security type issues that may come up, as well as emergency management and disaster preparedness. And that's where Centricom comes in as well, because it's a hub for that.
Now, are you in charge of just the Methodist University Hospital or the whole network across the Memphis area?
No, I have some system responsibilities as well. So some of our outlying sites, like our new Olive Branch Hospital in DeSoto County, our hospice location in East Memphis, as well as for some of our clinics as well.
Many people don't really understand that severe weather does have a major impact on hospitals. Could you tell us some of the steps you go through to prepare for severe weather?
One of the major steps that we take is actually a disaster drill that we do once a year. It's part of a community-wide mass casualty drill that we'll do, and many times the focus of those drills are weather-related, natural-related, flood, tornado, severe weather impact, and we drill to see how not only the hospital will be impacted, but how we would be in a position to support the community as well if called upon.
So could you explain a little more what Centricom is and what the main purpose is?
Yeah, Centricom essentially is short for Central Communications. It is essentially our in-house central station, not only for all of our security operations, our cameras, access control, ID badging, but also a central communication hub for the entire system. So if we had a disaster and we needed to make a disaster notification at a specific site or system-wide, a lot of that would be initiated and coordinated through Centricom.
So when, say, there were a tornado warning, are you in charge of just the Methodist University Hospital in terms of warnings and alerting the doctors and staffs of that immediate threat? No,
Centricom actually is a system resource, so it can be used to support any of the Methodist sites. So we would be monitoring, NOAA, National Weather Service, some of the local media as well, and we would be alerting Methodist facilities that may be in range or say in line to be impacted by that weather, and we would do a lot of that out of Centricom.
So you just alert the hospitals that are in the direct path of the storm, and not all Methodist hospitals? Essentially,
a general notification or awareness is going to go out to all of them, because obviously we're all, very close by in a contiguous metropolitan area. But specific notifications, so let's say if it was a tornado warning for the northern part of Shelby County, and let's say the Methodist North facility may be the one that would be directly impacted, obviously we're going to have more in-depth notifications to them. But the other facilities, Methodist South, Germantown University, would also be at least alerted that we do have bad weather in the area.
So what procedures are in place in case there were a tornado warning? What do you go through to make sure the staff's prepared, other than the drills you have throughout the year?
We have an actual alert code. It's called Dr. Storm, and essentially Dr. Storm means if we were to announce that code and broadcast that code, it essentially lets the clinical staff and even non-clinical support staff know that they have to take specific actions. So for clinical staff, for example, they would then say move their patients maybe into a center hallway. So, for example, hey, a tornado shows that Methodist North is in the direct path of a possible funnel cloud. We would activate Dr. Storm at Methodist North. One of the first things, it's all about patient safety, and that those patients would be moved from those windows, say from exterior windows and hallways, and moved to an inner core area that would be safer and allow them to then come on the other side of that and hopefully not have any impact on patient care.
So when the hospitals and Dr. Storm, do you still accept patients coming in from outlying areas?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the one thing is that you got to be prepared to accept patients at all times. We are a community resource. So, even though we're going through this Dr. Storm activation, the emergency department most likely is still going to be up and running. The one thing about tornado activations, as you know, Finnegan, is that they can be over fairly fast. So as soon as the alert has passed or as soon as the threat has passed, we're going to do a quick assessment, and most likely we're going to be up and running, prepared to accept patients.
So how's the Centricom facility prepared for a natural disaster or a man-made disaster?
Well, Centricom itself, it's housed at our university campus, and it is housed in an inner core area with that specific being able to survive a disaster in mind. Hopefully, if the outlying parts of the hospital were directly impacted, the idea is that Centricom would be one of the last areas impacted, because it's going to be a crucial resource and has to be up and running.
Now, is that the main command center for the hospital if there were to be a disaster?
It's the main command center as far as communications go. If we were to have an actual disaster impact either the community or one of the Methodist sites, then we'll stand up a second command center, and that's where all the leaders, the CEO of the individual hospital, myself, and some of the other key, like the chief nursing officer, chief medical officer, will go and then stand up a separate command center, but Centricom will support that and still be that central communications hub.
So say there were a disaster somewhere across the Mid-South and patients were coming into the Methodist hospitals. Do you guys dispatch the ambulances or stage them in those areas that receive the severe weather?
We do have that capability now. The actual municipalities have their own 911 EMS type systems. What we do is we have 4 ambulance companies that we contract with to provide ambulance service and transport for our system. So I'll use the disaster, the tornadoes that hit in North Mississippi in December, for an example. So we knew quickly that there was probably going to be a good chance of injuries and casualties out of that. Our North Mississippi Hospital in Olive Branch, we knew would be one of the ones that would be getting an influx of patients. So what we did was we activated mutual aid agreements that we have with those 4 ambulance vendors, and we essentially then started staging a large number of those ambulances at the Olive Branch site to prepare for transport. We would stabilize at Olive Branch and then move patients out of Olive Branch, obviously up to the Memphis hospitals for that higher level of care. I'd say within an hour of being activated, we probably had anywhere from 15 to 25 rigs sitting outside that ED ready to help us with that transport.
And later in the show, we are going to talk about those tornadoes across northern Mississippi, but we have a little under a minute left. Could you explain how you guys are alerted to the potential for severe weather, and how are you alerted when warnings are issued? In
Centricom itself, we're constantly monitoring NOAA and National Weather Service. So we not only have the weather radios, but we're tied into their websites as well. We have, just like everybody else, we have a monitor and a TV up and going, so we're monitoring the local media broadcast. So really you could say it's a primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary is going to be those weather alert radios, secondary is going to be the websites, third is going to be the TV.
That's a great place to take a break. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute to talk more with David Evans. Please stay with us.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning. Why?
Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you get stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please.
Don't quit on me. Okay. But remember, it's not what you say. It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Which planet are we living on? Right here.
What do you think it would be like to teach?
Are all a part of our...
Chances are, you have no idea.
Turn on the lights and everybody look up.
Teachers today are breaking down obstacles, finding innovative ways to instill old lessons, proving that greatness can be found in everyday places, and that you don't need to be famous to be unforgettable. That's what it's like to teach.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. I'm Finnegan Gruggett, and you're viewing Weather Watch. With us today discussing emergency preparedness is David Evans of University Hospital. So in the last segment, we discussed how severe weather impacts hospitals. And as we start off the second segment, I want to talk a little more about how severe weather may affect ambulances going towards the hospital. Do you guys have any procedures in place where ambulances have to stop coming to the hospital due to dangerous weather around the hospital?
Oh, absolutely. Not only the ground ambulances, but also the helicopter services as well. So Centricom is tied into their individual dispatch for those 4 ambulance companies, as well as we have landline contact at all times with Medcom and with WingCom. And through them, we can update and say, we need to stop all ambulances. We need, Methodist University is currently experiencing a tornado event, for example, and we need to stop all inbound traffic. Obviously, the hospital wing, the helicopter would be part of that.
So you were talking about the hospital wing. What are some of the impacts that they have if they can't land at a hospital due to the weather?
We have alternate landing sites as part of our disaster plans, and we drill for that. So for example, at University Hospital downtown, we currently have 2 helipads. If for some reason both of those pads were not in service and were not able to be used, but a wing could still approach the campus, we would actually land in the center of the Central High School football field, which is actually just adjacent to us right next door. If we had to move completely to another site, they could land at, say, their pad that they currently have on Union. We could land them at Le Bonheur Medical Center. We could even land them at DeWitt, Spain downtown, and then arrange for one of those ambulances ground transport to then complete the patient transport into the facility.
You were talking about how Methodist University has 2 helipads. Is there a difference between the 2? Is there a reason you built the second one?
Actually, we built a new Center for Emergency Medicine about 18 months ago, and we're very proud of it. It doubled the size of our old emergency department, and when we were building it, we realized we needed another helipad. That one helipad was not sufficient based on the traffic we were having. So we kept the older pad that we had on top of the Thomas Wing at University and decided to open up the second pad, and so now we have 2.
And before this interview, you were talking about how the first helipad's actually higher than the second one. Mm-hmm. How does wind affect the first helipad?
Wind can play a significant factor in it. Obviously, the pilots and the crews, the second pad is built, it's only about 4 stories high, as opposed to the other one that's 13 stories high. So it does make quite a bit of difference for them. They know their flight margins and their safety margins, and a lot of them love that lower pad. They don't have to deal with the wind quite as much as they would on the higher pad.
So at the helipad, what precautions are in place in case some disaster were to happen? Do you have any precautions in case something were to happen with the helicopter?
There is all kinds of safety equipment, physical safety equipment in place. Not only the lights and the windsock to allow the pilots to obviously help with their approach and their visibility and their wind gauge, but we also have a fire suppression system on both pads as well. It's an automatic system that allows essentially a fire retardant foam to be deployed if it needs be, if there was, say, a fire incident with that helicopter while it was on the pad.
So say a tornado or some other significant type of severe weather were to directly impact the hospital and area emergency ambulances cannot get to the hospital, how long can you guys stand alone?
We drill to stand alone. We're required by statute, but also our own internal processes is that we can stand alone for up to 96 hours without outside resupply. Actually, we can go a little further than that. 96 is our minimum. We probably could go in excess of that, probably another 24 hours if we had to. But 96 hours is typical for most of the facilities to be able to stand alone on their own.
So what are some of the main supplies that you guys back up? Power, gas, what are some of the other things?
Oh yeah, power and gas. We have our own on-site storage tanks for the fuel that runs the backup generators. So if the hospital loses power, the generators kick in automatically. All critical systems will be fueled by those generators. So there are several large underground tanks that fuel those in excess of 100,000 type gallons. The idea is to go 96 hours. We have a large amount of food and water. Obviously, the basics are on hand. Obviously, our pharmacy staff have a certain amount of 96-hour or more worth of certain meds that, if we were cut off from the outside, to where they would be able to stand alone inside. So those are the key items: the fuel, food, the water, and the pharmacy.
Okay, so say it's been more than 96 hours and you need to restock, but most people cannot get to the hospital. Do you guys have any backup, any supplies in an area where you can get to them in case you need them?
Yes, we have a large, what we call the DC, the distribution center, that's actually attached to our Methodist South campus. It's a large, it's probably well over 50,000 square foot warehouse facility down there that keeps a large supply of all of those basic supplies that we need, that hopefully within 96 hours or shortly after it, we would be able to transport from the DC and resupply all of our central hospitals.
So before severe weather, do you have meetings with emergency managers and the weather service to get prepared for the severe weather?
Yeah, usually as we see that those weather warnings beginning to come in, what we'll do is we'll make phone calls to our partners at Shelby County EMA. Obviously internal, we have our own manager of emergency management for the system. He's on the phone with me, and we're beginning to maybe pre-stage some items that we think we may need from the DC to some of the hospitals. But Shelby County EMA is a close partner and a crucial partner, and we're talking to them about what level should we go to alert-wise, and should we, what actions we should begin taking.
You said the backup supplies are in the FedEx area. How would you guys get those backup supplies to Methodist University?
Well, we do have an agreement with them. It's a central pharmaceutical stockpile that could be pushed within 8 to 12 hours of notification. It is a CDC federal mandated type program. FedEx would be a partner on pushing those out to the hospital, and so it would be FedEx Custom Critical and FedEx Express trucks that, as long as the roads are open, they'll get through and they'll be able to supply us with those crucial meds from those stockpiles.
So as we were talking about before, there's meetings in place before severe weather. Is the National Weather Service ever at any of those meetings?
Usually we're on the phone with them. Usually it's telephonically. We're touching base with them. Obviously they're subject matter experts on that, and we want their input.
We have about a minute left. Do they ever discuss any weather information or steps you guys should take in case there is that severe weather potential?
Yes, we've consulted with them before in the past to kind of, in fact, our Dr. Storm policy was drawn up with some of their input as to what level we should notify at what level based on what threat warning they're putting out. And so they are a key resource on this.
But we have to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this quick break. Please stay with us.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
This new mom is struggling to get the skates just right. And now she's holding on for dear life. Her kids can see she may have broke her knees. They still love her, though she looks like she's attacked by killer bees. I'm allergic. Proof you don't have to be perfect to be the perfect parent.
Thousands of siblings in foster care will take you just as you are.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. I'm Finnegan Gruggett, and you're tuned into Weather Watch. We want to spend our last moments talking about the devastating tornadoes that impacted the Mid-South during December of last year with David Evans of the University Hospital. So during this last segment, I want to highlight the tornado outbreak we had last December. What information did you guys receive leading up to that outbreak?
Oh, we were receiving constant updates from the National Weather Service in Memphis, as well as some of the NOAA alerts. As you know, that for at least 24 to 48 hours previous, we'd been getting some significant warnings that this would probably be a serious outbreak, at least the potential for it, and the conditions existed for it. So we were very much on alert that day, and we feel we were really ready for it.
Luckily, that storm didn't push through Shelby County, but it went off towards the south. What procedures did you take once you learned that a tornado moved through northern Mississippi?
Well, we had activated a Dr. Storm at the Olive Branch facility. Now, even though the funnel clouds did not touch down in Olive Branch itself, one of those clouds did pass directly over the Olive Branch area, and because of the proximity, we put Olive Branch into a Dr. Storm for just several minutes. It quickly passed by, and it was shortly after that that we were getting reports that funnel clouds were on the ground, and some of those communities in North Mississippi, from DeSoto all the way over through Marshall County, had been hit.
What role did you play during the severe weather outbreak in positioning all the ambulances?
As the director of Centricom, we knew quickly that we were going to have to go into essentially what we call a Dr. Able, which is a disaster mode. While it did not mean that Olive Branch itself had been struck, we knew now that we were in disaster mode to support the community. So one of the first calls I make was to activate those mutual aid agreements that we have with those ambulance companies. Got on the phone with their contact people, and we started pulling as many rigs as we could to the Olive Branch campus to get ready for those transports that may need transport up to Memphis.
So luckily, again, that tornado didn't move through Shelby County. Would there be anything you would change if that Olive Branch site would have been hit and all the ambulances would have had to go on to either the Memphis hospitals or down to Tupelo?
Yeah, that was one thing in our debrief that we looked at as far as our response is that we were very fortunate that, one, the tornadoes did not strike the Memphis area, and two, that the Olive Branch facility itself was not struck. If either one of those had been the case, we probably wouldn't have been able to pull as many of the ambulances down to the Olive Branch site as we did, because obviously there would have been a need for those as well on the Memphis side of the state line.
So whenever there's a tornado, obviously there's a lot of damage. What procedures are in place in case there's a gas leak or something in that nature? How do you guys stop that gas leak, or the patient rather? How do you decontaminate them?
We have equipment on site at every Methodist hospital that's essentially a decon kit that allows us to decontaminate patients that possibly, have been contaminated with either some type of chemical or some type of substance before they enter the hospital for treatment. We will do that right outside the ER. At University, for example, it's built right into our ambulance bay, so it's automatic. We can do that at all of the sites, and in fact, all of our associates in our ED security facilities are trained in the use of that equipment.
So if you don't know if there was a gas leak where that patient was, do you scan every single patient coming in?
Yes, we would treat it as if they, absent any information, we're going to treat them as a possibility. And so we'll decon them before they actually go in. If that's even a remote possibility, even though we don't have confirmation, we'll decon them before they go into the hospital. Obviously,
communication between the hospital and ambulances and other agencies, a major role. What steps do you have in place?
Well, we have, obviously, as we talked about, we have Centricom, but we also have a redundant system with shortwave radio. If for some reason the impact was massive to the communication system in the metropolitan area and your cell phone and your landlines would not work, we have two items. We would use our ham radio. We would also have satellite phones that we keep in our disaster kits as well, allowing us to still make those communications.
So you mentioned ham radio. Do you guys ever have any drills, or what role does ham radio play in preparedness for a disaster?
It's crucial because obviously, the impact to the community could be that all phone lines, landlines, and cell towers are down. So ham radio may be one of those only ways that we communicate. We do drill that. That is one of our check boxes, so to speak, when we do our community-wide mass casualty drill that we do every year. And so our ham operators at each site will do a test of the system and ensure everything is ready.
So you said you drill several times a year. Did the actual event go as planned as you've been planning in the drills?
Oh, it did. It was, there's an old saying you will fight as you train and you will train as you fight. Our drilling really paid off that night. A lot of it was just automatic. Staff, associates, the ambulance crews, pretty much everybody knew what their job was. Now, as in most disasters, there's always that one item that maybe you weren't prepared for, but we adjusted to it fairly quickly. But I would say probably 95% of that operation went according to plan because of all the drills we'd been doing.
So how does planning for severe weather, how did it actually affect the role that you played, and how was it as easy as it was to get everything in place?
Actually, it was easier than what I thought, and it was because we had been doing those drills. Like I said, the majority of our drills are from a natural disaster type drill. Obviously, with the part of country we live in, we have a propensity for severe weather, especially tornadoes and even earthquakes we drill for, based on where we're at on our location on the New Madrid Fault. Drilling those weather-related events really paid off that night and made my job a lot easier because a lot of it was just on a sheet of paper and all we had to do was follow our process.
You mentioned the New Madrid fault line. Are there any particular steps in place if there were to be an earthquake? Because critics say that that would cause major disaster across the entire Mid-South.
Yes, it would. If you listen to what the experts say, they say if we do have one, it probably could be significant, maybe even a 7.0 or higher. We do drill for that. In fact, we even have a code like Dr. Storm. We have one called Dr. Shaker related to earthquake. And so we obviously drill to that. Earthquake is one of those you really won't know until after it hits. Obviously, our first thing would be to assess each site and see how each site survived and how it came out on the other side of the trembler. And then after that, begin to go into our recovery mode.
We have about a minute left, but I want to talk about communications for just a second. How does ham radio play a role, and how would that help communicate to outside areas if there were to be an earthquake?
The ham radio is crucial, especially if we're losing all those primary and secondary lines of the landlines and the cell phone lines. Our ham operator has obviously all the codes and has all of the call signs for other ham operators in the system, and he would be stationed either near Centricom with that ham unit, or he would be near that command center, that second command center that we stand up that I spoke to earlier, and he would be our means of communicating to those other hospitals. Here's what we're doing, here's how many patients we have, here's what we're sending.
Well, thank you for coming on to the show. I appreciate all this information.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. I'd like to thank David Evans for taking the time out of his day to come on to our show. If you'd like to learn more about this show or simply watch more of our programs, please visit www.gmtvonline.org. Until next time, this has been Finnegan Gruggett for this month's edition of Weather Watch.